Hey, Chris.
Okay, we are connecting now, so I'll let you know when we're live. Sorry about that.
My fault.
No, it's totally fine. Hello, everyone. It is the only two journalists in the world whose last names end in Lizza. I feel comfortable making that pronouncement. Ryan Lizza, who I have known for literally decades, which speaks to how old we are. Ryan, give me an over-under on the number of times someone mistakes you for me, and then I will do that in reverse.
Oh, yeah, a lot of times. And I feel bad for you. You're just like hanging out here on Substack, doing your own thing. And then this asshole had to like come in
People
and
are like, man, you've been in the news a lot lately. I'm like, just to be clear, I love that guy, but it's not me.
there's a fun,
So
that
folks who
reminds me.
don't know Ryan, look, so I got to know Ryan. I was trying to remember this, and I was relying on my memory. I didn't look it up because were you at the New Republic initially?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's where I kind of, and I know you've been a million places, New Yorker, Politico. I mean, I know you've Esquire. I know you've been all over. But for folks who don't know Ryan, and I'm going to talk about this down the line a lot. One of the most naturally gifted, well, I shouldn't say naturally. I will just say one of the most gifted stylists. I don't know how hard you work on it, but one of the most gifted stylists and writers and profile writers and people who write about big things in politics that I know. I am thrilled that Ryan, is this week 2?
This is week 2, Chris, and you were one of the very influential people I talked to that really helped convince me that this wasn't a crazy idea.
It is not a crazy idea, and I hope week 1 has affirmed that. I mean, it's
it
week
has,
1.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Week 1 affirmed it. Week 2, now I'm not so sure.
yeah, totally. I get that. Once the shine wears off. No, but
But
Ryan
can I just say
now,
one
yeah,
quick
go ahead.
story about getting confused for each other? I was in an airport somewhere, and they were talking, and they or thought I was you, and we're talking and stuff, and they said, "Oh yeah," and then you were involved in you were in the middle of some scandal last year, weren't you? And I was like, "No, that was Chris Cillizza."
That son of
So
a bitch, Crystal is now always.
anyway, it's very useful to have this relationship.
So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and I really want to talk about this amazing piece you wrote. But I want to promote first of all. It is Tell Us. Is that how we're pronouncing it?
Yeah. Tell us.
TELOS .news. It's Ryan's Substack.
Not Telos, but yeah.
No.
God, most of the conversations I've had so far are just about the fucking. Sorry, I'm
How
cursing.
do you
Pronunciation.
pronounce it?
And so the high mind, telos is a Greek word for mission or aim or end, but the sort of silly pun is tell us news.
I love
Right?
I love naming things because like you spend so much time on it and you put so much thought into it, and then people are like Telos, and you're like no, it's a homonym. So
it's Ryan Liza and
exactly.
Telos.
You spend so much time, and you're like, this is perfect. It's Greek, and it explains like what I want to do in my mission statement, but also tell us. And then people are like, so Telos News, tell us about that, Ryan.
Now we know why focus groups were invented before.
Well, that's one thing that I know. I know it is the independent life. You don't have as much. There's not as much focus grouping that goes into making decisions and what to write, when to write, what to call things. I did that many times.
Imagine not having a real editor for a 9,000 word piece. I mean, that was like that's like no safety net, man.
I was thinking of you on that actually. Let's get into that in a minute. I want to just give me tell me the thing. And it can be negative too. I always say you need to embrace positive or negative. What's the you and I have been just full disclosure. You and I have been talking. We're friends, apart from all this. You and I have been talking a little bit about what does this world look like and what could it look like and did this make sense for you or not? And so you've been thinking about this for a while, even though you've been in it for a week. Is there something that is either what's the biggest surprise? I guess. And like I said, it can be negative. Like if you were surprised at the vitriol or whatever, I never know what it can be. But is there something where you were like, huh? Like even though I thought I had planned this all out in my head, it played out differently than I thought.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I think I think initially the great positive thing is what you would expect, which is just being liberated
Yeah.
from working with people. Um, and this I'm not talking about anyone specifically. I think we just all have this generally. Like everyone thinks their boss is, everyone thinks the person running their organization isn't, is kind of an idiot, or isn't doing a good job, or you disagree with. So it's just nice not to have that. I've
Yeah, you
always
can
had
do
this.
what you want to do when you want to do it.
I've always had this problem. It was very interesting writing this piece and not procrastinating,
Mm.
because I could have, I could have waited a month to do this. And I am a big procrastinator. When I'm working for someone else.
I totally know what you're saying. Yeah.
And yeah, and there's something about that that's really nice and affirming, of just no safety net, doing it all on your own. The tools are all there now.
Yes.
And Hamish, like I remember last week, I sent Hamish McKenzie, the co-founder of Substack, I sent him a text saying, you have created an incredible platform, and I should have done this years ago.
Yeah.
And I really, it really meant that. And I think I wish I had. I wish I had done it earlier. It's been it's just been nice to be re-engaged in a way I think I
Hmm.
wasn't working for someone else.
Absolutely. You
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 know?
have more. This is both a good and a bad thing, but you just have more skin in the game. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just you. Like I always said to people when I worked at CNN or the Post or what, both of us until recently, mine less recently, but you very recently, we've all worked for these big media companies, and it's like if somebody said to me like, "Oh, that piece you wrote, I really liked it," it's like I'm always like, "Thank you so much. That's like very kind of you." I mean, I'm always appreciative, but it's like at the end of the year, I'm probably still making about the same amount of money. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's not like I write one thing that people really like or think is really good and they share around, and then my salary goes up fivefold. Like with this, it's like okay, I am starting with this was my situation. I am
yeah.
starting with $0. So I need to find ways to, and like when you are invested in that way, I also think it's more personal, right? It's like people subscribe,
Totally.
people came to Politico, for example. Yes, of course, to read Ryan Lizza at some level in Playbook and what you authored. But they also came for Politico. I mean, one of the things that I learned was,
And increasingly so. Increasingly
yes,
so.
when I would write something on CNN.com, we'd have the data that would have like, oh, there are 120,000 people on it. And I thought to myself, like, okay, I got laid off. That sucks. But there are 120,000 people reading my story. All I got to do is get
Yeah,
10% of those people and I'm golden. Well, those people were mostly there for CNN.com, not Chris Cillizza. There were
yeah.
some who were there for Chris Cillizza or Ryan Lizza, but like, and I think that's a tough realization, but also I think it makes you work and be like, okay, every time somebody pays to subscribe to me now, I'm like, that's because they believe in me,
This is
right?
such, yeah. This is such this is. I have a lot of similar thoughts, and you had expressed some of this to me previously, and I really didn't wrap my head around it until the last week of doing it. One, on the news organizations, increasingly so. One of the interesting things at Politico is they really are going to a model where they want to. They don't want big salaried stars.
No,
They want
none of these
younger.
places do. They can't afford it.
Yeah, they want younger, cheaper,
Yep,
institutional voice people, and they kind of want to churn through them and push them out. That's sort of the way the direction they're going right now. Which they might have to do that to stay financially
I
viable.
agree.
And
I agree.
I,
It
I
sucks
want
if you're
them.
us, but
Yeah, and the other thing is the immediately your mindset changes and you think like, how stupid was I to like give all my intellectual property to these companies for all these years? Not everyone. Like when I worked at the New Yorker, I actually own all the articles from the New Yorker.
oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah,
When I
that's
when I
good and
left
bad.
CNN, all my emails, all the distribution lists, and all my content, we asked for it, but they didn't
Yeah.
give it to us.
No, of course not.
And you don't think of that when you're in it and doing it, but like I do
Yeah.
think increasingly, like here's the thing I always say, here's what you should look for in reporters and journalists: people with unique brains, people whose brain is not one you
Yeah.
can go buy off the shelf,
And you know
you
what?
know.
You know what is a? You know where you'll find, for better or worse, you'll find the unique parts of the brains of journalists it's people sitting doing stuff alone.
Yes, dude, it's a very lonely profession. I don't think people realize that.
You're gonna find more unique voices in independent journalism than you
Yes,
are in a big institution that kind of takes on a kind of its own identity.
totally.
The other thing I would say about this, Chris, that I think has been interesting to learn is that I like challenges, and the Substack environment is very flat. It doesn't really
Very.
matter that much where you've been. I think that matters a little bit. I think with some people, it's like, oh, that guy's been at all these corporate news organizations. I don't want to read them.
Yeah,
But it's like it's a meritocracy, and I think it's an interesting experiment to see if it's not like you're starting over, but if you can if you can sink or swim in this very flat competitive
I
world. So
totally agree. And
I
you're
find it's
doing it
scary, but it's also kind of fun.
and you're doing it without the benefit of a PR operation, of a social
Yeah,
media operation. I always People are like, "Hey man, I noticed you didn't post today." It's like, "Yeah, I was on a train. There's no one else or like I was on a plane, you know?" Anyway,
yeah.
all right, so I want to talk about what you view as when you were envisioning what Tell Us is going to be. Tell me that, and then I want to talk about the piece that you posted yesterday. I want to go a little bit in depth on that. So give me the big picture, and then let's talk about this specific piece.
I think the space we want to own, and you remember some of the conversations I was having with you. I thought at first, could I pull together a group of people that would do this together in some kind of loose consortium, and that's still, directionally what I would like to do down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured it was better, and a lot of people advised me this, better to just sort of like jump in,
Totally.
see what it's like, really understand it at a micro level, and then figure out how to attach other people, whether that's just like hiring people because you're successful enough to do that,
Yep.
or whether it's just building some informal
Yeah, some kind of
relationships.
co-op or consortium, like you
Yeah,
said. I thought of
the
the same
the
thing.
Telus network is what I like. Is the
Yeah,
kind of thing I'm
I
thinking
think
about.
that's the future of
Yeah.
this. All right, so let's talk
That's one thing,
about.
but then
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
second thing is, that's sort of the nuts and bolts. But the ideal behind it, or the idea behind it, is just to own a space around what I think is the signature of the Trump administration, and that is the weaponization of the government on behalf of Trump and his allies against their perceived critics and enemies, because I think that is fundamentally new. It's not completely new. You go back far enough in history, you'll see bad examples of this.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of extinguished it from, we spent there was a lot of work done to get
Yeah,
that
sort of
out.
post Watergate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of bad shit the government did going after people, and that to me is bad and a defining characteristic of this administration. And it will be. I was talking to Carville and Al Hunt about this today on their podcast, and I got in a little bit of a back and forth with Carville about this. It will be second nature for both parties in a number of years if it becomes, and I know we're all sick of this word, normalized.
I totally agree
We
with that.
saw it, and people get mad at this example, but you saw glimmers of it with Biden. What Biden did at the end with pardons,
Mm-hmm.
he and you saw his excuse. His excuse was, well, they did X, Y, and Z, so I've got to do this. And you
Yep.
can intellectually, you can understand that, but that's how it starts, right? So now the pardon power, any the next president, maybe they won't be as maybe they won't be like Trump and just having no shame about it, but these precedents are set, and it's almost impossible to change things. And so that's the thing that I think is the real worry. Is right now the Democrats are a source of criticism about all this, but you talk to some young activists, and they think like, yeah, when I get into office or when I'm in charge of the Democratic Party, this is all we're going to do the same fucking thing because that's just the way it is.
And
Once a weapon
politics.
is used, eventually the other side's going to use it too.
And you and I both know this. And if you spend any time around politics, what you know, politics, and by the way, political journalism is a copycat game, right? Like whatever. No chief executive in the future, Democrat or Republican, is going to be like, oh, well, Donald Trump expanded executive power, I'm going to hand all of this executive power back. No, because they want, I mean, the story of the last 40 years of the presidency has been an expansion of executive power, or at least an attempt. Now, has it ever been as brazen and as wide as we're seeing now? No. But the idea that the next, let's say that Gretchen Whitmer, though this seems less likely today, but let's say that Gretchen Whitmer gets elected president, I don't think she's going to hand back all of, right? Like the rubber band, Donald Trump, I think of it this way, Donald Trump is stretching the rubber band. The options, I think a lot of people are like, well, he'll just let go at some point and the rubber band will go back to normal. I'm like, have you ever stretched a rubber band long enough? It'll either A, snap. I don't totally know what that metaphor means for democracy, but it'll snap.
It
or
sounds bad.
it will get like my old t-shirts, like, you know, like the collar will be down here, like it won't return to its normal form. And so I love that.
Look at I mean, this is an obvious example. If a Democrat is elected in 2028, do you think Kash Patel is going to serve out the rest of his 10-year term
No,
as FBI director?
of course not.
And you know, I'll say this just I don't, you know, maybe he'll surprise everyone and he'll be the best FBI director ever. But I think it would be fair for a Democratic president to do that. But the 10-year term of the FBI director and not being fired, that's over.
Yeah.
Trump broke it. He put someone in that the Democrats find totally unacceptable. They're obviously going to fire him when they get in. And then nobody's ever going to have to respect that again.
No, you know what it reminds me of? We're old, so I remember this. I still remember the debate in 2008 when it was like, will Barack Obama take public financing for the general election? Do you remember this?
100%, because I was a huge critic of that, and I cannot believe he got away with it.
Man, he just did it. He was like, you know, I said it before, but now I can raise so much money. We're just going to abandon that. And now there isn't even a conversation
He killed
about public financing anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, nobody even brings it up.
Nobody brings it up, and I mean, I truly remember that as one of the like amazing Obama moments that like, wow, this guy can get away with shit, and he framed it in this way that like, I'm not going to take it from the government, I'm going to take it from you, you know,
exactly.
Power to the people, and which was a very kind of
especially because it's taxpayer money that's the public finance. It is the public money.
But exactly. And so he was really kind of, you know, not a traditional liberal argument there. And he totally got away with it. I remember a colleague of mine at the New Yorker writing a piece about it, a very liberal writer, and just 100% praising this and taking the Obama position. And I thought, wow, this guy's good.
Yeah.
Obama. But that's a great example.
So let's talk about, I want to talk about the piece that you wrote, because this is the kind of what I would say is like a very, in my mind, a very like classic Ryan Lizza piece. And it's the first big piece that you've put on the site. It's called Devin Nunes, Stephen Biss, and the Laptop of MAGA Secrets. Now, do me a favor and and do people, I have read 85% of it.
All the best stuff's in the last 15%.
Dang it.
I keep telling people, it's good you admitted that, because some people are calling me and saying, oh, I really liked that piece, and they talk about it, and I'm like, oh, they didn't read it. Because
totally.
If they had actually read to the end, they would have been like,
radical authenticity. I will read the whole thing. I have not read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Give us the cast of characters, and then if you can too, and I will link to this in the when we archive this, I will link to the piece and all that. But give us the cast of characters, and then also weave in there kind of how you got interested in this story, because I think I'm always fascinated by that.
I originally wanted to publish this last week because the piece to me is very much in line with the mission of Tellus, which is what can happen to ordinary people and institutions when the tools of government are weaponized against you. And I start, in watching some of this play out over the last few months, I started to realize, like, I've seen this up close. I had a personal experience that I never reflected on. And so, the piece is part first-person account of 6 years of litigation with Devin Nunes, former congressman and chair of the Intelligence Committee in the House. He became the CEO of Trump's company that owns Truth Social, and he now has an appointed position in the administration where he's the chair of the president's Intelligence Advisory Board. So has access to the full spectrum of intelligence and advises the intelligence community of the Trump administration. So very important, influential person. Runs Truth Social, one of the most influential platforms on the right.
Yep.
So I wrote a piece about him back in 2018. And it was, I don't want to get deep into the weeds on the piece, but the piece was basically about undocumented immigrants at a dairy in Iowa that his family owned. Okay. And to cut to the chase, eventually the core question in this litigation was, did his family knowingly use undocumented immigrants at their dairy?
And they sued you.
They sued me, he
Right.
sued me. It was
Don't
two.
skip over that part.
The
That
whole
part's
Nunez
important.
family sued me. Him,
Yeah.
his parents, and his brother.
Yeah.
All right. And it was a piece I wrote for Esquire magazine. Hearst, which a big company that owns Esquire, they were incredible. This team of lawyers that just backed me. Even though I didn't work there anymore for 6 years. Eventually, we prevailed, and the experience though of going through discovery, having to turn over your phone records. I think as a reporter, people think, oh, everything's going to be protected. I'm not going to have to do anything. It's not like that. You get
No.
into discovery, there's a lot of difficult decisions you have to make. We decided to be very, very fulsome in what we turned over. We very, very, very rarely went to the reporter's privilege because we didn't want the other side to be able to hold anything back.
Yep.
And we pretty much got everything we wanted from them. And what we got proved that they were knowingly hiring undocumented immigrants ever since they started with their very first employee in 2006. And so, his poor family, frankly, was dragged through this discovery process. And by the end of it, the judge in the case said that what I reported was substantially objectively true, and the whole case was thrown out. But there were a lot of twists and turns before it was thrown out. And so the two experiences I had that I think are relevant to like a little bit of what's going on right now. One is Nunez and his lawyer, a guy named Stephen Biss. They were basically just suing anyone who criticized Nunez, right? None of the cases were successful. None of them even went to trial, as far as I'm aware. And there's only one of them that's still active. But the point was not to win. The point was to make it more difficult for reporters to cover him,
Yep.
to, in my view, harass us, to use the discovery process to find out stuff. He believed there was some much bigger conspiracy behind my piece that they were very disappointed to learn there wasn't.
Right. I always think that's hilarious. So many people in politics and outside think that journalists get together in some sort of cabal and plan things. I'm like, you don't know how disorganized journalists are. But go ahead.
Yeah. And so, and then there was another part that it was really fascinating because the case was thrown out, and I thought it was all pretty much over. And then the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals wrote a crazy, crazy decision that reinstated the case, and sort of invented some new rules when it comes to defamation and what constitutes republication. I don't want to get too technical here, but essentially, they said that a tweet of mine had republished the entire original article. Okay. Now, as you and I know, if you
that would be hard given the character limits.
exactly, which I thought was this is crazy. Like it's literally like it is. It's that we call that a link. Like it's not republished. It's at Esquire's website. That's a link. This court, in opposition to every other court that has touched this subject, said, well, sometimes a tweet can actually be full republication. Now, obviously, if we lived in that world, it would be quite bad considering how much we link to.
Oh gosh.
And you'd have to take responsibility for republishing.
That could be the end of Chris Cillizza.
And so part of this, so the story is what it's like to have a government official, a very influential person, come after you like that, and also what it's like to see what I believe is an activist court that was trying to use our case as a vehicle to shoot up to the Supreme Court to overturn Times v. Sullivan.
And
And
explain that for people who don't know.
so Times v. Sullivan is the most important free press Supreme Court decision in American history. It's what makes it more difficult for government officials and anyone who's considered a public person to prove defamation, because it established a very high bar known as actual malice, where and the way to defame a public official or a government official is they have to prove that you did it with reckless regard for the truth or knowingly false. It's really hard to prove that.
Yep.
You can say something false, but it's hard to prove. It might be false,
that you
but
knew in
proving that it's
advance
knowingly.
that what. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really important for us, and it's a major protection. And at least 2 Supreme Court justices want to overturn it. And there are a number of their allies in the lower courts who want to overturn it, including, I'm forgetting his first name, but Judge Silberman. And the guy who wrote my opinion on the Eighth Circuit is a guy named Stephen Colleton, who clerked for Silberman. And and I just lay this out with a little bit more detail on why I understand this. But Colleton, Silberman, they want to get a case to the Supreme Court that could be a vehicle to overturn Times v. Sullivan. Now, it's probably too early. I don't think there aren't the votes yet on the Supreme Court. But that was like a smack in the face to see up close. Like, a politicized judiciary who with writing what I thought was a very outcome-based decision. That was just a fascinating experience. And so I tell all of that to as a precursor to argue that, like, what Nunes and his lawyer Stephen Biss have been doing since 2018 with these lawsuits was in a lot of ways a precursor of what we're seeing right now in the Trump administration.
His lawyer actually when you were talking, that was kicking around in my head, right?
And so this guy, now that's the kind of wonky legal, high-minded strand of the piece. The kind of batshit crazy strand of the piece is that Stephen Biss was a lawyer for Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, President Trump's Truth Social company, Nunes, lots of other famous MAGA people, Michael Flynn's family. And I'm just going to kind of give away a lot here. But one day, literally as a few minutes after he was filing something in my case, he had a massive stroke and ended up in not being able to talk or walk. And his laptop with all of the files of Kash Patel and all of these MAGA people, plus all of the discovery documents that he collected against CNN, the Washington Post, and all these other places. So an untold number of confidential documents from the plaintiff side and the defendant side was stolen from his office and went missing.
I mean, the number of stolen laptops in the last 10 years in American politics. Holy cow. Protect your laptop. Put it back in your bag.
And so, a lot of the end of the piece is trying to figure out what happened to that laptop. And I will just say the story descends into a kind of crazy mix of allegations and countercharges. And we learned something about Stephen Biss, the lawyer who was like the MAGA lawyer suing the press for a very long time. We learned that he's not exactly who he said he was.
I like that. That's a good tease. That's called a tease in the biz. So I want to point people to this. Devin Nunes, Stephen Biss, and the laptop of MAGA secrets. The reason that I like the piece, and the reason that I like what you do, is it takes a not small, but small-ish thing to illuminate. There's so much about sort of the lawfare approach that Trump has taken. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised by this, because I've always said, like, if you really want to understand Washington, the color that motivates it isn't red or blue, it's green. So, like, ABC settling or Disney, more, the parent company settling what is a frivolous lawsuit, I think, about George Stephanopoulos defaming Donald Trump. At CBS/Paramount appears to be on the verge of doing the same thing on another thing, and that one is about editing of Kamala Harris's interview, which I would say on 60 Minutes, which happens at having spent 5 years at CNN. Of course, videos are edited, interviews are edited.
It's
I mean, it's like very
garbage.
standard operating procedure. Fox does it, Newsmax does it, everybody does it, because guess what? On cable television, Ryan and I couldn't have a 45-minute straight conversation. They would have to break for ads. They would need to do other segments. It's just the nature of the beast. Anyway, like, I think it speaks to the thing that I'm kind of, your piece really got me in the mindset of thinking that the one of the stories that is told, but I feel like it's not told enough, is the rapid and nearly complete capitulation of everyone from Republican elected officials, the media, and law firms. I mean, I feel like the law firm thing is it looks
incredible.
a lot like extortion. Basically, like I'm going to make this real difficult for you unless, and then these law firms are like, here's some money. Like, I feel like that story is undertold, and what I like about your piece is it doesn't go through the normal channel to get there, but I think it makes it shows us where that strategy kind of got its origins.
Yeah, these guys were exactly. I mean, I think it really was the precursor to this idea when at a certain point in the last decade, a lot of conservatives became convinced that Democrats were doing bad things, and they had to fight fire with fire. There was a sense of the other guy is so corrupt and so bad and so willing to use prosecutors and the Justice Department to go after us that we've got to do the same thing. That's the mindset. That's how you hear it justified frequently. Now, of course, for most conservatives, this really violates a lot of small government
Totally.
principles.
Yeah, it is government overreach at the nth degree at some level.
And then there are a lot of groups and a lot of think tanks and a lot of people out there who are trying to put sort of intellectual arguments around on what Trump is doing, which I think is kind of also a little undercovered, because we always think it's like Trump is doing. There's a whole apparatus now that has built up since he came on the scene in 2015 to try and like put meat on the bone of Trumpism. Some of it is stuff that's just like economic policy, like tariffs, but a lot of it is the the stuff that goes under the umbrella of Project 2025.
Yep.
And so it's not just Trump. It's not just like this very unusual person who's willing to push the boundaries and do and say things that other people wouldn't. It's the whole party at this point, right?
And I think that's such a good point, because I think really Trump is really, to borrow a phrase from my children, Trump is really about vibes more than anything else. Like, yes, I think he actually believes tariffs work. I mean, we can debate that, but like, I think he believes that. But it's really kind of tonal more than anything else, right? Like,
it's instinct.
I still remember in 2016, you remember that, I mean, talk about a crazy storyline. It wound up being outsider Donald Trump against party establishment favorite Ted Cruz, even though the party establishment fucking hated Ted Cruz. They were less afraid of Ted Cruz than they were of Trump, right? And I remember someone calling, who we both know, and they said, be honest with me, who's more conservative, Donald Trump or Ted Cruz? And I was like, let me stop you right there. Like, are you serious? Because whatever you think of Ted Cruz, he is broadly a conservative. You can dislike him. You can say his motives or whatever. But he fits in the. Donald Trump isn't conservative in any meaningful way other than he's like tough talking, sort of. There's there was no, particularly at that point, this is like May 2016. There's no like oomph behind the policies. It's like Mexico is sending us rapists and criminals, and I'm sure some of them are good people too. There wasn't like a border policy, right? So I do think what's grown up in the last 10 years is the attempted intellectual structure.
Yeah.
Because people are like, well, what is Trumpism? I'm like, I don't, like, beyond kind of a cult of personality built around him, there wasn't really an answer to that. And now I think, like, Vance is a good example. JD Vance, I think, is a good example of that. Like, right? Like, he is the attempted, like, what national populism means from a legislative, like in an
Yeah.
intellectual think tank perspective, because Donald Trump is not.
Yes.
And I
And a
think
lot.
that's critically important.
Absolutely. And so, so now he's got the intellectual infrastructure for a lot
Yeah.
of his stuff. And I mean, the starting point for that intellectual infrastructure was make sure that you get as many people out of the government as possible and replace them with your own people, or you can't get anything done.
Yep.
And so it's I mean, this is like the story of our times. It's just the way that a political party has harnessed the reins of state power to do things that were really taboo, like yesterday, like
And you know what
last year. I
you
never
know
thought
what
that. Yeah. So
you and I haven't talked about this, but one of the things that I've learned, and this is like this is not even Trump one, but really Trump two. And I know we're only 100 days in, but I did. Do you know Steve Vladeck? Do you know that guy? He writes a really great Substack on constitutional law and
yeah.
Supreme Court. He's at Georgetown now, a law
Those are the guys
professor.
I mean, that's the stuff those guys in executive functions. I mean, that's the stuff you need to read now to
Yes.
understand what's going on. Because
So
this is so much of it is a legal story.
I so Steve, I did a Substack live with him. This is probably a month ago. And he made this point that's really stuck with me and I keep thinking about, which is a lot of the stuff people like you and and I actually think like the average person who followed politics, a lot of the stuff that we thought was like the law is not really the law.
Yeah.
It's like an accepted set of standards and
Yes.
behaviors that the president has typically exhibited.
There are a lot of
We've just
loopholes.
never confronted. So it's like, okay, I don't think Donald Trump can run for a third term based on the 22nd Amendment. But
Yeah.
when I talked to
They
Steve,
locked that down. That
he's
language they
like,
locked.
there is a reading. It's narrow. It's kind of crazy, but there is a reading by which, if you were willing to push it, it
All right,
might
this is what I
get.
haven't heard yet. Wait a second. Back up.
Yes, his
Back up.
his point is like it's
Vladeck is
all about.
saying that
It's
even
I
on
don't even
that.
remember what it was, but all it affirmed to me was this idea that these things that we've always thought were hard and fast rules and laws, what it really was is we never had someone as the president willing to be like, oh, what about if we take over Greenland or what? I mean,
100%.
that's an extreme example, but like, well, now we're calling it the Gulf of America. I mean, some of these things don't matter, but a lot of them
Hundred
really
percent.
do.
This is it. It turns out that there were all sorts of powers sitting there.
Yeah, that's right.
That if you read the fine print, uh,
Totally.
it's like it's like a really annoying customer or turning around corporation looking calling you and reading the terms of service you signed and said, you know what,
Yeah.
I can actually just come in and
We
take the
actually do
computer.
own your firstborn child. Yes, right. Right.
And everyone's like, holy shit, that Congress did give him that power if you read it really closely. And not to get too alarmist, but if you start like really going down a rabbit hole with some of the good legal commentary out there, he hasn't even started. I mean, there's a
No.
whole series of emergency measures that are on the books that any president could, if they wanted to push the boundaries, they could. But as you point out, Chris, they're, what were they bound by previously? Public opinion, and
Totally. And
uh,
caring about public opinion.
right, but he doesn't. I mean, 40. He's always going to have 40%, and
Yep.
if no one in his party is ever going to say a word, it used to not be like that. If Bill Clinton had done any of this, Democrats would have impeached him.
Yep. Absolutely. No. And when you were talking, I was thinking of tariffs. It's such a good example. You saw when he put the reciprocal tariffs in on Liberation Day, like there were quotes out of the Hill where it was like very clear that like Republican elected officials, including people in the Senate, were like, wait, can he do that? Or is that a thing you can do? And then there's this movement to like take back the tariff power. It's like, dude, you should have thought of that
A long
last
time ago.
year.
But this is a good point. I think the courts are going to decide what's illegal and what's not. Clearly, as a non-lawyer, some stuff looks on the face of it illegal, but a lot of it that we're like finding really, really troubling is likely going to be found to be legal.
I
And
know.
there
Just
was
because
that
it's
move.
wrong doesn't mean it's illegal. That's what I always say to people.
Yeah, and so this is such a good point and an underappreciated one that and then the stuff that is illegal, he doesn't care. He goes to the courts. The Supreme Court eventually maybe says, okay, you can't do that, and he moves on.
That's right.
We've just never
It's
had a president that wanted to test this
no,
much. I mean, partly because you test and you test and you test, you get pushback, and it I think the theory previously was it ends up just like eating you up, destroying your presidency, so you don't
not
get
for
anything
him.
done.
Yeah, but not for him. I think that is his presidency in some ways. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. It absolutely.
It's
There's no
it's the
legislation.
testing about. He's constantly like. It's like a dog. Like, is the invisible fence here? Oh, no shock. I'm going to take another. Is the invisible
Yes.
fence here? And I mean, okay.
Yes.
I want to.
That's
Can
good.
we
Good
end on?
analogy.
I want to end on something because one of the things that I really admire about you is your ability to. I always say that the people who are the best political journalists are the people who are able to understand what motivates someone they're either profiling or covering. And I've always admired that about you. Your capacity to like get inside the heads of how these people think and what motivates them. So I want to this is the most profiled person in the world is Donald Trump. How would Ryan Lizza
I,
approach?
the answer is going to surprise you.
Okay. No, no.
But
I mean,
go
I
ahead.
always say like most of these Substack lives don't tell the people listening or watching. Most of these are just selfish. I just like talking to people that I think are really smart because it helps me think about politics. So this is a selfish question because I like you are someone who is really good at this. I've never really done those like long form profiles. You've done that kind of stuff. And I think it gets into human psychology. And like, so like, tell me how you would
It
approach
does.
it.
I will tell you that I've soured a little bit on the psychological profile. You
Okay,
know,
interesting.
I think partly because I think the more the more you think and know about psychology, the limits of what anyone, sitting at their laptop can
Right.
actually reveal and understand. You probably should be pretty humble about that. You
Yeah.
can go to a therapist for 10 years and not have a breakthrough.
Dude,
So
don't I know
so
it?
I've come to be a little bit more skeptical of
Okay.
the deep psychological profile in general. Not to say that I still love reading good pieces like that and occasionally doing them, but so that's in general. On Donald Trump specifically,
Yes.
I think it's a totally useless exercise, and I don't think I don't have any patience for any more Trump profiles.
Why is it a useless exercise? Because he doesn't have an internal light? Like, what's
No, I think
your.
we know. I think we know as much as we need to know, and
Okay.
he's an open book. He talks all the time,
Yes, he
and
does.
I don't. I'd be very surprised if there's anyone that can teach me anything that's useful in given the current circumstances by doing a long psychological profile of him. I think what those pieces end up doing is just kind of like missing what's really important right now, which is that he's going after law firms, and the Justice Department just changed its rules about how they'll go after the press, and sending people to El Salvador, and so that's my kind of like half journalism, half skepticism about the power of armchair psychology argument
Yeah.
about that journalism right now. I'll read those pieces. I think big newsrooms that can devote the resources to some of it, it's good. But I don't have as much appetite as I used to. If that,
I also think like I mean it's definitely true with him because like you said there's so much we know, right? He whether it's on True Social or in when he does these executive order signing ceremonies that go on for 50 minutes because he's answering answering but he's talking to the media. That's
yeah,
number one. So he is in a weird way like a totally open book. The other thing too is like I mean I remember 30 years ago like you didn't really kind of know who these people were because like there wasn't social media, there wasn't cable TV. You didn't really see them. And now I
yeah,
feel like particularly with him, but also just the way that our content culture works, he's everywhere. So it's like I can't imagine people are like I don't really know what motivates him. Like we know what I
yeah.
mean, like and
We
I would actually say that is true of any politician. Like I keep this book on my desk. right? They're like a
I
seminal
have it over there. Yeah,
19,
the most
19
unread book on Washington D.C. bookshelves ever.
Look at the print. I mean, it's not just 1,000 pages long. It's like micro print. This book was
Tough to
written
read.
about the 1988 campaign by Richard Ben Cramer. It came out in right mid 1991,
Yeah,
and people read it because you didn't know what these people were really like. You
yeah.
didn't know. And now this book, I mean, its timeline is unimaginable, but this book is unimaginable because we know so much.
We know so much, and also there's no up and coming candidate coming around for 2028 that would think it would be smart to have a novelistic nonfiction writer hang out with them
Follow them around.
for a couple of years to write
I
something
feel
like
like
that.
if you ever thought it was if you ever thought like that was a good thing, and I bear him absolutely no ill will, but Chris Licht, who was the president of CNN, his decision to let our friend at the Atlantic follow him around and go to the gym and say like, I bet Jeff Zucker couldn't lift these weights. Like, never do that. I can't recommend that strongly enough.
I will tell you a funny story about that I've never told. I hate to be mean, but the genius behind that at CNN was a guy named Matt Dornick.
Yep.
I'm really trying not to be mean, but not the brightest bulb in the world. And I remember being at a dinner with him and Licht right before this piece came out, and it was a small group of people, and Dornick was bragging about how great this piece was going to be. And they were specifically he and Licht, who I do like Licht, and I think he got bad advice here. And they were literally talking. It's like, yeah, we had the journalist from the Atlantic go with Chris to the gym. This piece is going to be awesome, um, and so it was. And I remember thinking like, oh, this probably this
Yeah,
is
like
work.
it's hard for me
But
to
they really
imagine
thought
like
they really.
a trip to the gym ever working out all that well. Like if a reporter was like, "Hey Chris, we're gonna profile you. Can we come to the gym with you?" I'd be like, "Absolutely not," because I lift like 5-pound weights. It wouldn't be for any other reason. It would just be embarrassing.
There's going to be something to make fun of you
Right,
about at
right.
the gym. It's just gonna like
All
remember when
right,
Paul
so I
Ryan
want to
posed.
end because I don't want to be I want to be mindful of your time and I want to be mindful of the time of the people watching. Look,
I just
Ryan
sit
and
here
I
all day
know
on
each other.
Substack Live, so
Yes,
this is what
Ryan
I
and I
do.
have known each other for many decades, ups and downs in both of our careers. We
Only ups for me. I don't know what you're talking about.
totally okay. I had the downs, you had the ups.
No, I'm kidding.
We it is. I find it kind of cool that we've both wound up. We're basically the same age. We both wound up in this place where I really think that people who think like us and want to do journalism like we do can be happy. It's cool. We have totally different paths. We don't write. Ryan's style is not my style. Ryan's cadence is not my cadence. But it makes me happy, like that like we can continue to do this work, and hopefully with everybody's support to continue to do this work. It makes me happy. So do me a favor. Tell us news is the name of the Substack. Ryan is a great follow. He is building, and you should absolutely follow him because again, uh, pieces like this one, Devin Nunes, Stephen Biss, and the laptop of Magger Secrets. I don't care if you care about Devin Nunes or you knew who Stephen Biss was. Trust me that this piece will help you understand Donald Trump's Washington better, and that to me is coin of the realm stuff. For where we are. Anyway, Ryan,
I
I just want to say
appreciate that,
thank
Chris.
you for doing
I
this.
really appreciate it. I think it's very cool and very fun that we're here at the same time in our lives. And let me tell you, and you know this because you had people like me coming to you and inquiring. Judging by the number of conversations I have had with friends and colleagues who are at places they aren't happy at,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's gonna be a
Yeah.
lot of new faces on this platform. And I hope we figure out a way to support all of them and to make it work.
I know, and
Because
I do think I want to talk to you. We'll talk offline about this. I mean, we can talk online in the future too. But I do think that we need to work and lean on Substack, and I've done some, but to figure out ways to offer a way that people could subscribe to me and you for less than the total of subscribing to me and you separately, or
Yeah.
whoever it is, because it's like,
Yeah.
yes, the contrarian, those people are going to be fine. Jen and Norm are going to be fine. But like for people like us who, we don't have instantly 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
There needs to be a model that supports that too. And I've talked
Yeah.
to them a little bit about it. And, I think it's a conversation that's really important to have both behind the scenes, but also in front of the scenes.
Yeah.
And say like, this is, because I hear it every day. People say like, hey, I love all these different Substacks. I just don't have enough money to subscribe them, which I totally get.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure our journalism is getting out to as many people as possible. So
Look,
anyway, that's
I'm the
to be
same way.
continued.
I don't pay. There's a lot of Substacks I should be paying for from people I really admire and even recommend that that I'm not. And
But I
so
mean,
I understand.
we're on budgets too.
Yeah.
I mean, like I don't have a money tree out in the backyard. I wish I did, but so we get it. Anyway, Ryan, thank you for taking the
All
time.
right,
I
let's do
know
it
how
again
busy
soon,
you
man.
are. Follow Tell Us News, folks. Subscribe. Follow Ryan. You will trust me. He will give you something unique that you are not getting every day. This is not just Donald Trump is the worst or Donald Trump is the best. And that to me, he is telling you things that other people aren't telling you. It's unique, and that's why you should subscribe. All right, Ryan. Thank you,
I
my
really
friend.
appreciate that, sir.
All
I'll
right,
see you
dude.
soon.
Take care, dude.
All right. Bye.
Bye.